So we welcome Sir Desmond Hayward. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you with us, sir. And if we really were going to go through all the unbelievable, amazing, incredible things that have happened in your life and to you, we would probably be here for several days.
Probably.
So I'm just going to start with this.
Yeah.
All right. Born in Torquay, grandparents of white British and Indian Malayan descent, parents hippie/liberal, quite badly bullied at school. So began to learn transcendental meditation at the age of 11. Went to India, then studied engineering in Norfolk, worked with the US Army in Germany as an engineer.
Oh, in their engineering department.
Spent time in Spain, Yugoslavia, in their engineering department. Spent time in Spain and Yugoslavia for holiday companies as a comedian and also as a kissogram, sir, which hopefully we'll come back to a little bit later. Okay. Worked in America as a financial advisor/property advisor, novelist, comedian, magician. The question I have to ask you, all of this, Sir Desmond Hayward, is when people ask you, what do you do, Sir Desmond Hayward? What are you? What are you and what do you do, sir?
Just say Des is fine. I guess it's relevant to whatever is happening at that particular moment in time is what I indicate is going on. So that's how it works. At the moment, of course, I'm just in transition because we're going to be moving from England to Scotland, and and once I get there, I will probably be doing lots with helping people in the field that I've been in for quite some years after helping the military. That's in coaching individuals to better places and spaces in their head.
Okay. And so would you say that you're sort of like a chameleon? Yeah? You adapt to your surroundings, you fit in?
I would say that would probably be, yeah, that's yeah, I hadn't thought about that for a while. And then when I started putting a CV together, I thought, my goodness gracious, man, you've done a thing or two. You've got a story to tell.
But if we look back at some of the things that informed what you do now, I mean, it sounds like you had quite a bad time at school, Sir Des, with a fair amount of bullying. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a pretty traumatic time, I suppose, in many ways. I created my own ways of of getting out of school at the time. It was a small school, and we were you know, you're fairly close to pavements or the road in a quiet area in that particular time. So I used to push a toy over the edge or something. It would go outside. I'd say, please, miss, my car just fell over the edge. Can I just pop out the school gate and go and get it? I'd get it and then disappear. I'd go run home. Oh. Things like that. But yeah, it all came to a good ending as far as the bully teacher got fired because it was witnessed doing what he was doing by the mistress, the headmistress, who I had a good relationship with, which was great. And so he was gone. And then it was just a case of helping to re-educate the kids who would follow his lead. And I did that by absorbing as many joke books as I can and telling jokes during break time before the bell went off and then run back inside. And so things improved a great deal after that.
Is that where your love of comedy and entertainment sort of has its roots in? Because it, you know, for many people in a situation like yours, they use comedy and humor as a form of defense, as a form of protection. Is that what you found in comedy?
Yeah, it was, and I don't think I really realized that until later on in life. But what I did was change an intention with humor. And then I always used to be the class comedian, or I always used to do that sort of thing as the years went by, and until it became a profession. And I used to go to hospitals, volunteer, and do comedy skits and things. And I thought I was really, really funny, but then I realized that actually they would just laugh at anything, and it wasn't really necessarily me. And then the first time I actually did comedy properly with a paying audience was at a restaurant no longer in Torquay called the Handsome Cab, which was owned by a friend of my parents then, called Phil Linder, lovely man. And he used to have a brilliant cabaret thing there on a Friday and a Saturday night. It was a very exclusive fish restaurant right on the seafront. And I told him that I was absolutely the best, God's gift to comedy stage, and he really ought to have me there because, of course, I'd done lots of things at hospitals for free, and everyone laughed, so I must be good. And of course, I didn't know anything. After Friday night, he said, "It's a rough crowd tonight, don't do it." So I said, okay. And then he said, Saturday, "It's a rough crowd tonight, don't do it." I said, "No, come on, put me on, put me on." So he gave me a 20-minute spot. He gave me a 20-minute spot, and of course I had no clue what I was doing. These people were eating food, talking to each other, and I was doing impressions and monologues, which they're not listening to because they're eating and they're talking. And really, it should have been really quick, witty things. Food here is fit for a prince. Here, boy! And move on to the next one, and things like that. But I didn't. I was droning on, and people were looking at me and just shaking their head. And I got so nervous at that point. I was begging for a fire alarm to go off, or an earthquake, or something to happen to get everyone out of the building, including myself. Eventually, I had to sing. The piano started, and I jumped into a song, "Don't Give Up on Us, Baby" by David Soul, years old. And I was so nervous. I forgot the second verse, and I hummed through the second verse because I couldn't remember the words. And it was just, I experienced what they call dying on stage. Yeah, I finished the song, and the piano was still playing. So and then I walked off. He was very encouraging, though, Phil, bless him. And he said, "Listen, if I were you, for the next week, I'd walk around Torquay with a bag over your head." So, and he got letters of complaint, and I don't know why, but he never invited me back to do another one. But he was very encouraging.
Hey, the sign of a great comedian, the determination to get through no matter what. But alongside this this entertaining kind of gene you have in you, and the comedy, you were also developing this sort of spiritual side as well, which again was a big part of what informs what you do now. And that was taking on transcendental meditation at the age of 11, then heading off to India as a teenager, where most kids are like playing with Lego or riding BMX bikes. And why did that start so early? And why is that important to you? And how has it become important to you throughout your sort of career and your life, allied to the comedy side?
Yeah, well, gosh, this is a big question. So, so because of my parents, how they were, I do recall they hired this guy, and you paid £25, which was a lot of money in the 60s. And you bought, this guy came up in the house, a couple, and they had incense joss sticks all over the place. And everyone was going in the room doing this, and then it came my turn. And my mum was great at, when things like this was happening, she cleared the place and re-dyed the carpet. On this time it was blue, and she cleared the room of all the furniture, so put it in one of the other rooms, and there was just pillows on the floor, and people were looking at the ground, very thoughtful. And then the bell would go, and then someone else would leave the room and go upstairs and be initiated with their word. And every time they got up, I noticed their white socks or trousers, whatever they had on, had a different tint color on it as they left the room, because the carpets were still had the dye on. And then I started to do this, and they were very basic. They explained what to do and how to help concentrate the mind. And so I would follow, I would do this. And it was very different. And sometimes I couldn't actually relate very well to the kids at school, because they were, like you said, all into silly things. And I tended to have a bit more conversation to the older people, indeed my parents' friends. I could relate to them a little bit more than I could to a lot of the school kids, apart from my good comedy mates. And then that developed up, and then a few years later, went into a slightly deeper phase where I learned some more different techniques, and it took me on a very special journey inside, and where I really felt a really deep sense of contentment. I was able to see a particular light within inside. It was quite amazing, quite incredible. And then I had a fantastic journey to India, because my mum said, you know, Leo, I want you to understand a little bit of what your genes are from the Indian side, because you've been in England, you've grown up seeing all this side. I want you to come and see what some of your genes are about from the Indian side. So it was that was in itself a fascinating journey. But I did literally go up a mountain, and I sat with a Swami that's supposed to be a realized soul, and we sat and we talked for hours. And so that
it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Lee.
So that's what informed, gave me a real sense of understanding of the preciousness we have within inside of us. Very different to having stuff, and I've already met lots of people who had nothing, and they weren't particularly content, and I'd already met people that had a lot of physical wealth, and they weren't very content. So it had to be somewhere in between, and I felt that I'd touched on that and learned some aspects of that.
I ask about that side of your life and also about the comedy side, because you said at the beginning that what you do now is you try and help people or coach people to be in a better place in life, and I think people or someone can't do that unless they've been through some sort of quite challenging personal experiences themselves. And you've had your fair amount of tragedy in fairly close proximity. Your younger sister passed away due to a hospital error. Your father contracted cancer. Your marriage broke down. Your first marriage broke down in quite sort of trying and very challenging circumstances. And your mother contracted terminal brain cancer. And you also wrote a book about how you took care of her and spent time with her in the last sort of stages of her life. And I would imagine that you use those two areas, comedy to some extent, and meditation and the spiritual side, to get through that and to help yourself through that. And I think in that sense, that must give you a better understanding of how to help other people achieve a better position in life.
Yeah, I think to a degree, and I say that hesitantly, because everyone has a relative difficulties in life, and it may not be the same thing, but we all have difficult times which are relevant to us and they're important to us. And because you always hear about those examples where there's always people less better off than you are, it doesn't really help you in your own personal situation. But so everyone has their own story about whatever it was or whatever difficulties they go through. But it is where you are inside yourself as to how you deal with whatever that is, whatever that may be. And some people deal with it in different ways, don't they? Some people smoke things, some people drink things, some people exercise, some people go off and disappear. Well, people do it in different ways. Some people become very low and very depressed. If you're able to have something inside of you, which I feel fortunate to, in many ways, that you can hold on to, you can hang something on, and that you know somewhere inside you that this moment will pass. That at this particular moment, it's an experience, it's a feeling, and it will pass. And within that time that it passes, it will become a memory. Because anything's ever real for that moment. When that moment passes, it's not real anymore. It's just part of a memory system. And so one of the things that have helped when I used to run a charity was to help them understand that a perception of an experience gets a feeling. The feeling gets an emotion, and the emotion gets a behavior. If you change the perception of what that experience is or was, in most cases, because it's a memory of the past, and you change that perception, that changes the feeling, that changes the experience, and that changes the emotion, and that changes the behavior. And so if you can put those things succinctly together and deliver that to the individual, and also do everything content free. So there's no point in getting people to reiterate or talk about the events of the past, because it's just a memory now. It's a memory there, and you're bringing that memory into the present. So if you let the past be the past, but there's a particular way to do that, and then you can see it as something in the past, it can it won't affect you so much in the present. But there's particular techniques that the team and I would run through to help people achieve that. So content free is really important, because there's just no point in going over and over and over and talking about the old problem that you really want to forget about.
You know, I find it utterly, I'm almost, and I mean this, almost sort of feeling slightly mesmerized now, just listening to your voice and thinking about that and that process. It must be an incredibly rewarding experience to be able to have a positive impact on people using all the different experiences that you've learned and the techniques you've learned as well. And we're going to talk in a second about your what you're doing now, and more specifically about your YouTube channels and the various sort of aspects of what you do. But it's really hard to ally what you've just said so beautifully and so eloquently with your previous career. And I'm just going to touch on this just for a few seconds, Sir Des, of being a kissogram, sir. So we go from, this is the chameleon, this is the juxtaposition that is Sir Des, you know, the kissogram, how was that manifested? And you know, are you still doing that perhaps?
No, good heavens, no, they'd all run for miles if they saw me coming up with my kisser in position. I used to operated a health club for a while in the big metropolis of Felixstowe, the fitness studio, and during the time I was developing that, I needed to generate extra income, and I saw an ad for a kissogram. So I was in a slightly better physical shape then than I am now. Obviously not much difference. And so that they had me do a Tarzanogram, and I did it once or twice, where I had a skimpy outfit on. Let's not go into detail. And basically involved the chamois and stuff. And I went running into a fish and chip shop in Felixstowe, with having prior arranged this with the manager of the place. And he grabbed the waitress, who was just screaming hysterically, as I threw her over my shoulder and ran out the fish and chip shop with her. And yeah, I'd calmed her down because she really was hysterical, and brought her back in and read her a card from her employee friends, and did that. Hey, it was a few extra pennies, and I convinced them, because I wanted to put a bit more clothes on, to do Rambograms instead. So I managed to. The funny time was when I misinterpreted the table, and I went and did my whole spiel at the table, and they were still staring at me, and I realized it was the wrong group. Then there's someone across the
pub. I love this. This is the sort of the crazy kaleidoscope of skills and experiences that I love about you, Sir Des, and it brings us sort of in a nice full circle to what you're doing now. Then you've got these various aspects of what you're doing. You've got your YouTube channels too. Tell us a little bit about those, and what you're doing on those, and what you're doing at the moment.
Okay, so I've put together, it's been a little bit on hold, a comedy channel, Sir Des comedy channel on YouTube. And you're right, it didn't rest well with me hearing about all the things that's been going on through the COVID. So a bit of comedy is great. And but I've also, just as of yesterday, uploaded some relaxation things. So I've got another channel that I'm going to be launching within the week, or soon, which is a relaxation channel. And it's not just my voice, it would be a variety of people, female voices, doing a whole variety of things to help people sleep, for anxiety, for encouragement. So I'm going to have those things on those channels, and it's all for free too, so people can just come and have a laugh and feel, you know, talked through asleep. And there'll be affirmations coming up, and some really good meaty chunky things that people can get into and feel better about themselves for that. When we move up to Scotland, which will be by September the 30th, there's a bunch of golf clubs in the area. So initially I'm going to, because I'm in contact with some people up there, help encourage golfers to feel better about themselves, and that will extend into wives and their family, because once they feel better, they'll say, hey, you know, and develop some things that way. So I'm going to open up my a little therapy area. And then also I recently qualified to train people to do what I do. So I'm going to start social distancing and all those good things as you can, working with people who want to learn to do the sort of things that I can do. And I think that's one of the best things in life that you can do, is to pass it on, give it to someone else. Don't keep it a secret. If you've got something that works really well, let it out. Let other people share in that, because we're here for a fraction of a time, my friend, and our job isn't to keep it all to ourselves. Our job in life is to give it out and to share that talent, share that whatever it is that you have that makes a positive difference in other people's lives, is to share that.
I love that. I love that sentiment, and we're almost finished, Sir Des. But my final question is, Sir Des isn't just some random title that you have made up for yourself, or that we have made up. You are actually a Sir Des, are you not?
Yeah, I am. You know, when I did the charity Save Our Soldier, some people said, you know, you really ought to be summoned for a title. You know, your organization saved over 50 lives, and you've helped hundreds of people who were otherwise didn't want to be here, and you've helped direct them. So, oh, that was a lovely thought and a sentiment, but the reality, there's lots of other people probably far more deserving than I to do that. And then someone suggests, you know, there is a funny but legitimate way, and we suggest Sealand. So there's an organization right off the coast of the UK. It's got an interesting history. So I was presented with a title from there, the same one that was given to what's the famous cricketer from last year that was on GMTV? The cricket captain was, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. So he was presented with a title, just and it was a legitimate title. So actually, I've been presented with the same one. It's on my, official documents, and I give all the paperwork to them, to those people, and they do all the official, check it all out, and they say yes, good, and so it's just something, really. The recognition goes to the many people that were brave enough to do what they did, and brave enough to go forward in life. Those are the people who really deserve and really don't get
wonderful.
recognition.
Well, Sir Des, charity champion, entertainer, life coach, novelist, comedian, all of the above, kissogram, and so much more. But my favorite, just someone who wants to try and help people be in a better place. It's been an absolute pleasure, sir. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for all the amazing things you've done and will continue to do, Sir Des.
Paris, it's been a real pleasure. Heard you over the years, and I'm really, really encouraged, and thank you very much for taking the time to say a few words and share some time with me.
Pleasure is mine.
You take good care.